Here at Room and Board, we've talked about some fantastic games. We have top 10 lists for a bunch of games that are awesome to get to the table, but I think it's also important to talk about the games that didn't hit that well. These are games that I was very hopeful for, and for one reason or another, mostly the reason being that they're baby games for babies, or they're garbage games for garbage people. One of the two. They didn't quite hit with me and they didn't sit with me very well at the table. And so in this video, you're getting two lists. You're getting one list from the Room and Board community, and you're getting one list from me of the top 10 disappointing games so that you can avoid them at all costs. And actually on the community list, there's some games that I think are quite great. And there will always be this idea of varying opinions whenever there's a disappointment list. But I'm going to share at least my experiences, and I'll try to condense the experiences from the Room and Board community when we're talking about disappointment. I've done this topic a few times before, generally on Rahdo's channel for the R&R show. We've talked about specific to the year. And for a lot of it, for me, it comes down to the idea of broken expectation. When the expectation gets to be so high for a game that it can't possibly live up to those expectations. And so there are some truly terrible games on this list, at least for me, but I also recognize there will be some that you probably love and enjoy. And I'm here to say, unfortunately, that's not okay, and you have to change your opinion so that it is the same as mine. But you've had your caution, you've had your preface before we begin, and then we're going to jump into it. We're going to start with the community number 10, then my number 10, and then at the end of it, I'm going to give you my honorable mentions, which I have a list of seven additional ones. And then I'm going to give the list of the community's honorable mentions, which when you have a bunch of people creating a giant list of disappointing games, well, you're going to get down to 143. So there's going to be 143 total games, plus 10 of mine. We'll see if there's overlap. We'll blaze through those at the end. These are all the games to avoid, every single one of them. If somebody was disappointed once, well, you have a chance of being disappointed, and there are so many other games that you could play other than that. So let's get into the community's number 10, which is a mistake, and they are wrong. The only disappointment that I'm feeling for Aeon's End Legacy is the disappointment to the people who put this on their list because they're garbage people. But we have Aeon's End Legacy of Gravehold specifically, and I'm just looking in the annals of the Aeon's End that this was specifically the second Legacy game, which I know that my good buddy Zach has played through, and I think they enjoyed it. I'm reading a post that Zach made in our Discord saying that the story for Aeon's End Legacy was a bit long-winded, but the gameplay was tops for him, and he loves Aeon's End. That's his number 2 game of all time when we did his list. The comment on Aeon's End Legacy for the first Legacy was, "Ooh, you don't shuffle your deck. Ooh," which I completely agree with. Who cares? It doesn't matter. "Ooh, big boss monster. Ooh, I don't care. Boring deck builder akin to Dominion. Played about half the campaign and couldn't finish it. Just not enough variety or difficult decisions to make when buying cards and honing my deck." That's fair. I mean, I played the original Aeon's End Legacy on ultra hard mode because I'm a big, strong, brave boy. So we had one for Aeon's End Legacy, one for Aeon's End Legacy Gravehold. I would absolutely recommend, because I think it's such a great introduction to the series, and I'm sorry for leading you all astray who didn't like it. But I can see they really push forward the idea of, like, hey, you don't have to shuffle your deck, and it's very dependent upon the card market. Although I find with a Legacy element, they kind of tailor the card market a bit. A good thing to pick up is the New Age or the Outcasts version, because they give kind of a mini Legacy component in them if you are interested, and then you don't have to worry about like reading through the story or dealing with any of the excess stuff. I like the dual juggling of your power, building your power and your deck building aspect versus building your damage output and dealing with the onslaught of monsters. But I understand if you don't have any taste whatsoever, you might not like that, and that's totally fine. I really do like that as a comment, though. Ooh, don't shuffle your deck. Ooh. And I agree wholeheartedly. They really push that as like being a selling feature, and it is the least interesting thing about the game ever. But I really like Aeon's End. I haven't played the second Legacy of Gravehold, but Zach did, and he really enjoyed it. We played the first one together. And I will continue to play Aeon's End and continue to enjoy it. I love the little additions that they have moving forward. But don't get it, because you'll be disappointed. That's what this list is, and I have to stand by it. I stand by the Room and Board community. Anything you do, anyone you murder, I assume they had it coming. My number 10 for biggest disappointment is specific to this series. I like this system a lot, and so my expectation for this was super duper high, and it just didn't meet it. That's Too Many Bones Unbreakable. I love Too Many Bones Undertow, and seeing Unbreakable, I'm like, man, Undertow is even better than I thought. But Unbreakable, I found, was the last iteration of the Too Many Bones system. It was sort of designed as a standalone, but not really a standalone. It was designed as additional content for people who already love the system. And I think that's an important distinction to know when going into it, that it feels a lot more fiddly, and a little bit more cumbersome than the previous iterations, a little less streamlined. And if you have knowledge of the game system, that probably won't bother you. If you are approaching it just as like a newbie, now I had played the Automaton of Shale and Undertow and the base game before playing and reviewing Unbreakable, but I still just found the ideas with the battle mat and flipping over the chips to not be as fully realized as the sort of slick experience of Undertow. I did play as Carcass though. Carcass is fun. He was an additional gear lock. And I think Chip Theory Game makes great quality production stuff, but if you are just delving in to Too Many Bones, I'd say stay far, far away from Unbreakable and get something like Undertow instead. Highly recommend Undertow over Unbreakable. And so I think I was expecting that same rush and that same enjoyment as I got delving into Undertow, and I was sort of hindered by the mechanisms of it. And I also think that Cinder is a stupid boss and needs to be completely reworked, because it is just long. It's not fun, it's just long as you wait and hope that these little stupid minions will come walk towards you in the right way that you want them to and fall into a pit of lava. So you can stuff their bones into a pit of lava and stop the mountain from exploding. Slightly disappointing. I also find Gale to be a disappointing hero, but I think Figment is interesting. And so I think the heroes in Undertow were significantly more interesting. So that's why it hits the biggest disappointment, because I was really on a huge high from Too Many Bones, like really love the system, excited to delve into more, and just like let that shoot Too Many Bones up in my esteem, and it sort of did the opposite. So that's why it comes in for my number 10. Number 9, this again is tied. 10, 9, and 8 are tied on the community list. When you have a lot of people contributing disappointments, I think it is worthwhile noting that all of these on the Room and Board community, they kind of tied with 2 people, and then our last two, the top 2 on the list for the community had 3 people in unison, which is pretty good when I think 21 people contributed. 18 people participated. So getting 1/6 of people out of the entire scope of gaming to have played the same game and agreed that it wasn't good, I think is a pretty meaningful statistic, but it also aren't the sort of collective unified numbers that these lists, especially on the community lists, are used to. But that being said, number 9 is Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium, which is ranked number 6 on Board Game Geek, and I actually really understand this feeling, because my first play of Dune Imperium was magical for the first half, and then it ended in a really disappointing way because of the intrigue cards. Dune Imperium has since is one of those games that every time I play it, I get more and more excited about it. I'm really excited to delve into Uprising a little bit more. The reason I have delved so much into Dune Imperium is because it is in the lineup for the World Series of Board Gaming that I work for, and I need to know the ins and outs of the game so that I can create content around it. And so they have replaced Imperium with Imperium Uprising, and so now I'm excited to see what little tweaks that base game really brings forward. But Dune Imperium is one that, like, the first play, I played the first half of it, I was like, yeah, I love how things interact. And then the second half, I just got some really good intrigue cards that made me win the game. And it felt really random. It felt like just drawing a chance card in Monopoly. And I was really dissatisfied with the experience because it felt so anticlimactic from what the game was kind of promising. It's worth noted that this is also amongst the room board community. This is one of the highest rated games as well. So it's fun to see that it did appear at two people's, that it hit in their disappointments as well. And I think a lot of that will have to do with how highly rated it is on Board Game Geek. Anything that is rated super high on Board Game Geek, should be an expectation, right? When the masses enjoy it, you think that you will enjoy it as well because of that sort of collective unified experience. But we all, unfortunately, are unique people and not one mind meld yet. But believe me, I have the experiments going and we'll get there soon. No individual thought. And some people were saying that the expectation of the theme didn't carry itself that well in Dune Imperium as well, which I've never read Dune, so I didn't have any of that working against me or towards me. That's funny. But yeah, I can also totally understand that feeling of it not measuring up, and it is one of those that I have enjoyed more on repeated plays. But I think the important thing to talk about with this is that if you didn't like the kernel of it, then there's no sense in playing it again, right? I see this all the time whenever I'm reviewing a game, or when I'm looking at other people's reviews. They say, you didn't play it enough. Or that's often the go-to when people are trying to like poke a hole. They'll say, how many times did you play it? Did you play it with this expansion and this module? Did you play it with this thing or this thing? And while I recognize that sometimes repeated plays can unveil things that you didn't see, unveil different strategies. You can see that something isn't broken when you may have thought it was because you were mad that you were losing. I also have found in my decent experience of saying, okay, I need to play this one more to give it a good shake. I think I don't like it. That the things that you don't like will often impact you and stop you from really enjoying it. So for me, for Dune, what I think was important to realize is that like, I loved the first half of the game. I was like, yes, I love these mechanisms. And then there were elements to it that kind of let me down. And so knowing those elements and being prepared for those elements and explaining that to whoever I was teaching the game to then really helped me sort of accept that was a part of the game, that it was a feature and not a bug, and then move forward with that knowledge and then kind of up-level my enjoyment because of that. And then while accepting that as an aspect, then I could move forward. But if there were things that I didn't like already, like if I didn't quite enjoy, like really love the other aspects of it, I wouldn't have been able to get over those things that kind of disappointed me. And I think that's important to sort of think about and realize when we're talking about disappointing games and when people are like, you gotta play it again. Oftentimes you don't. Oftentimes, sometimes you will be blown away, but like, and the experience will likely remain consistent for you and not be the outlier that everybody else thinks that you should shift to. My number 9 is a game called Dead Man's Cabal. This is one of the lower rated ones. It's ranked 6,000 on Board Game Geek. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was disappointed by it. No, I love this box art, right? I got this in a bundle of games. I had heard of this game more than a lot of the bundle of the games. And it was by Pandasaurus, who had been putting out a bunch of cool things. The idea is that you're raising skeletons from the dead and creating a whole cabal of cards that you're going to score points for. I was like, man, this looks really exciting. And then it was just a bunch of 6 or 5 mini games that didn't really interact with each other at all, and that weren't all together that interesting or fun based around getting these cards. And so this is one where the art sort of really drew me in. You won't find the Night Cage on this list. I decided to not include the Night Cage because I harp on it. It's become a meme on the Ruin board now, and so I didn't want it to be on this disappointment list but Dead Man's Cabal sort of falls into that same category of things where I was like, yes, the art and the concept and the feeling of it that's being presented seems so exciting, but ultimately this was just mediocre. It was just boring. It was just mediocre. And although the cover looks cool, I would advise you to stay away from it. Although I doubt that it is in print anymore, and I doubt it's going to get a reprint. So there you go. Number 8 on the collective list is Earth. Earth, which has been the huge hotness. It's just been put into the World Series of Board Gaming as well. Congrats to Nick Henning for being the first ring winner of Earth. And this is a game that you can play on Board Game Arena and nowhere else. You have a physical copy, but you're not going to play it. You're going to play it on Board Game Arena and go, oh yeah, that's better. I like Earth. Earth was also on my list of biggest disappointments on an R&R show because of how vehemently people went into a lather over this game. Everybody was tearing their hair out. They were taking their clothes off and painting Earth on their chest and running through the streets screaming, "This is the only board game you need to play from now until the end of time." And I think that might have been a bit of an overreaction. You know, just a slight one. I think it's still quite good. I think it's a good game. I think it's a fine game. But I think it's also sort of random number generator, the board game. You know, there's so many cards. There's so many things that you can do. It is hard to find sort of a salient strategy. Although if you watch the World Series of Board Gaming and you play against those people who are able to win consistently, they might prove you wrong. I think people in the Discord sort of talked about how there's just so many things, so many decisions that you don't get the satisfaction and feeling of what something like Wingspan might bring you. Draw a bazillion cards and play a few of them is what it boils down to. So that's number 8 on the collective. Number 8 on my list is Marvel United. Marvel United is a game where this is where countless people have told me that I need to play more of it. I need to play the expansions. I need to play the better versions of it. And because this is one where I might actually listen to those people down the line, I'm certainly not going to purchase anything additional for Marvel United myself. But if somebody else had the multiverse or the X-Men version where it had upped the complexity, I would be willing to try it again. For me, the lack of complexity here made for just a poor gameplay experience. I found it way too easy. The base game was completely uninteresting to me. You're essentially deciding between 3 symbols on your cards, and you will play one of the 2 of them. You can move, you can punch a bad guy in the face, or you can contribute to another track. The strategy of the game is very obvious in that the villain gets better anytime you complete one of your objectives. So it's very simple. You just don't complete those objectives until you can complete them all at the same time and then start punching the villain in the face. This is what somebody watching a video got mad at me when I referred to it as a baby game for babies, and I stand by that statement. It's just completely uninteresting, completely overhyped, and very boring. And this is one that, like, I was suckered into the FOMO during the X-Men campaign. This was the first 5 reasons you shouldn't back, which is a series on this channel where I try to talk myself out of buying a game. And I did it out of necessity because I was so overwhelmed and so hyped about this game. And it just... Renee was having a coughing fit because she heard me talking about Marvel United and that it sucked. Hey, Renee, did you like Marvel United? Remember it was that game with the Marvel in the circle? Where you played a card and then you moved people around. Right, there were these locations. You had a little Marvel figure.
I thought that was dice thrown.
It's very different.
No, of course I didn't. I was so mad.
Yeah, it sucked. Why didn't you like it?
It was so boring.
Yeah. So boring. We both found it to be excruciatingly boring, and we gave it to our neighbor and not friend to give to their children.
Honestly, I'm sure we played it wrong. It can't be that boring.
No, we played it correctly. I checked numerous times. Apparently all the expansions make it a little bit more exciting.
That's like, oh, buy a shirt, but you also need to buy the sleeves to go with it if you want to stay warm.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, Marvel United was a big disappointment and should probably be higher up on the list, but there are still larger disappointments to come for me. I just don't like it, but I like that it's rated 1.81 because that is close to its rating of 0.01. Give it to your babies. Number 7 on the community list is Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars, which Renee would agree with. I certainly wouldn't agree with. I really, really love this game. Renee did not enjoy this game whatsoever.
Wouldn't even play it again if my friend asked me to.
Some people who are talking about it in the community are saying that it's also too long as engine builders go. It's way too long. If you play it without the prelude, for sure. It is longer as well, but again, that's the sort of thing where I like the core game. Like, I like it with Prelude, and I also really enjoy the core game. And so people will say, no, you got to play it with Prelude. Oh, you got to play it with that expansion to speed it up. But the gameplay loop is creating this engine and then capitalizing on it. And if you don't like that, Prelude's not going to fix it for you. And, you know, Hillary brings up a good point. Not sure any member of this species deserves to colonize another planet when we've squandered all the resources from this one. 100%. I can see why people don't enjoy Terraforming Mars if they don't like that lengthy process of building the engine. There are so many things to build and so much ramping up that happens, and it is sort of how can you ramp up faster than everyone else. I really love, again, how the World Series of Board Gaming does the setup, because it makes the beginning of the game one of the most exciting parts of the game for me, where you get 3 corporations to choose from, 2 of the ordinary, 1 prelude. You draft your prelude cards, and then you draft your starting hand of 10 cards. You do 5 clockwise, 5 counterclockwise. And that's really exciting, a much more exciting start, especially like if you're just getting to Terraforming Mars. They're like, you should play Beginner Corporation, where my first game of Terraforming Mars was very disappointing because I played a Beginner Corporation and I got a hand of 10 cards and no fun ability for the rest of the game. And my 10 cards were garbage because they were like end game cards, because there's a bajillion cards in the game. Less than Earth, but still a bajillion. But yeah, I can see people not enjoying it. You can't play it on Board Game Arena now with the Prelude expansion, which is a nice thing to do. So my number 7, coincidentally, has a 7 in the title, and that is 7 Wonders Duel. I talked about this recently in the Purge. My last Purge video that I did a little while back, I've just gotten rid.
We liked 7 Wonders Duel.
I didn't, and it's gone.
I think you did.
It's fine.
I think you forget.
No, I played it on Board Game Arena a bunch to see if I wanted to keep it. And then I was like, meh, this is the same every time. It's just fine. This is number 19 out of every single board game ever created. 7 Wonders Duel ranks number 19 on Board Game Geek. And that is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. I think it's okay. I like the concept of potentially revealing new cards, but it just was fine. And so this was my experience of having something in the higher echelon on the top of Board Game Geek. This is definitely the highest one on Board Game Geek that I have on my list, where I was really expecting a lot, but I like the 2-player variant of the original 7 Wonders better than this, and that is something that everybody hates, except for me and Rado. I don't really like the tug of war back and forth, and I think this helped me realize, or helped make me realize, that is a mechanism that really I bounce off of, and so because it is so prevalent in this one, that's why it was a disappointment for me. Number 6 on the community is on my honorable mentions. This is Tainted Grail. This is something that Renee has also played, that we never got through because we fought every time we played it. And we said, should we try it again? And I said, I don't feel like fighting today. So we fought about something else. Tainted Grail. I bought Tainted Grail when I was in the rabid state of the Aetherfields campaign. Aetherfields was going on. It was blowing my little mind. I was frothing at the mouth, thinking about all the amazing times that I could have with Aetherfields, and looking at all the beautiful minis that Awakened Realms was making, and just coming off of playing Nemesis and loving Nemesis that Zach bought. And I was like, man, this company is going to make the best things in the entire world forever. And so I impulse bought this copy of Tainted Grail off of my neighbor and not friend, Yuval, because I was like, I need more. I can't wait for Aetherfields to arrive. I need it now! I need it now! Give me the plastic! And I ran over and I sunk my teeth into the box and I grabbed the minis out and I just chomped on them. Yum, 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 yum. And what we got was a narrative campaign that is a little bit too obtuse for you to find out what the riddles are, what they want you to try to do in this exploration. And so you have to spend a lot of time figuring that out. And in that time, all the lights go out, and then you have to spend all your time getting resources to turn the lights back on so that you can continue with the adventure. I liked the card battling system of it. Whenever you encountered somebody, there was either a diplomatic encounter or a fighting encounter, and you would play these cards out onto the table, those ones that are face down. See if I can get a photo of the cards. Yeah, these cards here, which it would start out and you'd have to get a certain number of stat checks, and you'd add on these symbols to try to make matching pairs of symbols, which I thought was very fun. Zach and Colin are playing through it right now, and they're like, yeah, it's boring. You have a hand of cards, you have like 30 cards in your deck, there's no real way to hone your deck. You just say, hey, do I have any matching symbols? Yep, great. You play those, you move on.
I hated the cards.
Yeah, Renee hated the cards. I didn't enjoy the story that much, or I didn't enjoy Renee running headfirst into every dark, scary cavern.
How are you going to get anything done if you don't go in the hole?
That's true. How are you going to get anything done if you don't go in the hole? That's a question for the ages. And that's the tagline of the next Tainted Grail. Tainted Grail, number 3. How are you going to get anything done if you don't get in the hole? Yeah, I can understand why people are disappointed with it, and I'm surprised it was only 2 people. Yeah, a good example was also saying that like progressing forward sometimes becomes like the narrative example of a pixel hunt, where you're like, I know what I need to do to move forward, but how do I do that in the mechanics of the game? And when a game like stops you and it's not about solving the puzzle, it's about solving how can you get the game to do the thing that you know you need to do. That for me makes a really disappointing game. We're moving on to my number 6, and this is actually my number 5, but I switched it around because I'm going to have a crossover, so I just didn't want them to talk back to back. So my number 5 is Concordia. Concordia is one of those games where I was really stoked about it, super ranked high up on the Board Game Geek Top 100. A lot of my friends love it. A lot of my friends say, hey, you will love this game. And then I played it and it sucks. It sucks. And anybody who thinks differently, well, you suck too. And you know what? Your whole family sucks. Your dog sucks and your little babies suck. If you like Concordia. I don't make the rules. It's written on the back of the box. I'm just reading the quotes on the back of the box for Concordia. My issue with Concordia, and don't worry, Pat, if you're watching this, my friend Pat brought it this summer and was excited to play, and then he was watching a video of me like ragging on it. I would still absolutely play with Pat. I desperately want to see what is good about this game, and I don't think I ever will. Concordia is a game where you get all of your points by purchasing these cards up at the top of the board. So see all these cards? And these cards allow you to do actions. They let you to do actions, and that can help you do things on the bottom half of the board. Getting resources, trading them, expanding, etc. But the fun part is the things that you do on the bottom of the board, and that has absolutely no meaning if you don't purchase cards from the top of the board. Purchasing cards from the top of the board is completely unfun, and that is what the game wants you to do. It wants you to do the unfun part, and then it punishes you for wanting to do the fun part of expanding down below, because you didn't just waste your resources on purchasing card after card after card, because any ordinary card will be worth more than anything you do on the bottom half of the board. Come fight me, Concordia fans. I'm fired up. And you know what's disappointing me? That all of your comments down below are just completely unfounded. That's also one of my greatest disappointments, and should be yours as well. I just hate this game. I really do. This would be on like if I ever make a top 10 hot takes, this for sure is up there, because I think this is overrated and should be burnt for all eternity. And I'm going to put it in every death match moving forward, just so that I have the opportunity to burn it moving on. That's my number 6. Number 5, Concordia. Now, you know what isn't a disappointment? After that, I've been so fired up. I don't know if I should put this here. I'm gonna. This episode, this top 10 is not sponsored. To be clear, I'm saying this is my own volition. Because Into the AM recently gave me some sweet fall clothes, and I'm wearing the hoodie, and I just remembered that I wanted to give them another shout out in not a crowdfunding countdown, but in like a top 10, because these tend to get a little bit more eyes on them. But I'm just doing this because I like the company. I'm getting no money for doing this. This is not a referral code that I'm going to give you. It just gives you money off. And then they see that I've sent people and then have a higher chance of sending me more free clothing. But I'm also doing it because in their latest batch of clothing, they sent me a really sweet jacket. And I know that jackets are expensive. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to shout you out again, because like every single thing that I've ever gotten from Into the AM, and if you look at any video, I'm probably wearing an Into the AM shirt, is hella comfortable. great quality, and if you want really great clothing, you should highly look into the AM. You can use the code that I got to make up myself, Slippery Jim, for 10% off. Or if they give you a different code, because oftentimes if you go there, they'll be like, hey, have 15% off. Great. Use that instead. I don't care. I want you to get a good deal. And I can guarantee that you will not be disappointed with a purchase from Into the AM. This is my cute little jacket that I got, and I love it so much. And it's really comfortable, and it's nice and lightweight, but not too lightweight. Good for, I don't know, 15 degrees Celsius. I'm in Canada. I know disappointment number 7 will be that I don't use Fahrenheit for all you Fahrenheit users out there. But to all you Fahrenheit users, my biggest disappointment is that you don't have a scale that makes sense when 0 and then below 0 means water freezes and you get snow. Come on, just makes sense. That's a tangent. Anyway, I wanted to give them another shout out because I really like this jacket a lot, and I wanted to do it in a place that wasn't crowdfunding countdown so that maybe more people would see it. And I think it's just a genuinely fantastic company. So there you go, Into the AM, a free ad for you, because you make great stuff. And I think great things, like great games, deserve to be celebrated and talked about. And so what better place than now? Let's keep it moving. I'm going to take this off because this hoodie is also lightweight but warm as well, so I don't want to wear both when I've got a bunch of lights on me. But we're going to move on to the community number 5, and then we'll get to my number 5, which is actually my number 6. But yeah, you know, community number 5, which is the 7th continent. I have a full review on this where I talk about how horrible a game this is. I agree completely, but I want to highlight what the community members are saying and revel in it. Yeah. They say, similar to what I have said, it is card sorting the game. If you've ever wanted to just live in a library and flip through a Rolodex for no reason whatsoever, that's 7th Continent. Repetitive, endless loops to get food. The save system sucks and has you practically start from scratch. Just an awful experience beginning to end. I agree, James. And Sean also says that 7th Continent was his number 3. The game had so much promise, but had so much wrong around the seams. You just kept on banging your head against the wall. A single deck, making it's a solo experience. The weird instant death system that it had, the aimless wandering that you had, the weird crafting system. But Sean did say that he decided to purchase 7th Citadel, and that game is shining for him. So 7th Citadel took the actual positive points of 7th Continent and maybe has made it better. It's not one that I would ever think about diving into because my experience with 7th Continent was so poor as well. But this was one that was like, I think on the tops of so many people's lists because it got a good rating from the Dice Tower. And it was back in 2017 where campaign games were new and were novel. And so like the whole flipping and creating of a card map was so exciting to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people forgave a bunch of what we now see as like pretty significant flaws. So yeah, 7th Continent is community number 5. My number 5, well, my number 6, and the community number 4, which is why I put it here, is Disney Villainous. This is a crossover for me with them. Villainous is a game that people seem to love so wholly and completely, and I really don't know why. My friends Cody and Colin, they have Villainous at their house. They've played it a bunch. They really enjoy it. But it's essentially one big old take that fest, hiding, pretending to be an asymmetric, exciting puzzle when they didn't even balance the asymmetry correctly, because it's very well known that, oh, no, that's pretty cool. I mean, if you like it, that's pretty neat of somebody making their own stuff. Let's see if I can get a player board shot, though. That'll have to do when it's like really known that some of the characters are just easier to win with than others. It's just a broken game that hasn't been fixed, and people are like, yeah, it's fine, because you can mitigate that if everybody knows the game, because one of the actions is just like, hey, make the game for someone else longer. That's the game. It's Munchkin-esque in its essence, where you're trying to do your own thing, and then people are like, hey, oh, you're close to winning? I guess we'll all spend our turns making you not win. Haha, what fun. I don't understand when I see this come up on people's top lists. It's a heads down puzzle that you don't get to interact with anybody, but you do need to interact with people when they're getting close to winning. And you need to look to see that they're getting close to winning. And so therefore you kind of have to pay attention to their board, but it's not really fun or exciting to pay attention to what they're doing because you're just focusing on your own puzzle and cards and saying, hey, I hope I get mine done. And then just have to wait until everybody finishes their turn and decides if they're just going to slap you in the face with fake cards or if you get to continue playing the game and the puzzle that you want to do. Maybe it's better as a 2-player game. I've only played it in larger groups. Could be that. Oh, but even here, even in a 2-player game, I was getting annoyed by my own AP, but I felt like there was absolutely no ability to plan ahead. Yeah, it just sucks. It just sucks. If you like Villainous, well, I'm disappointed in you. So that was my number 5 or number 6 and community's number 4. We're going to move on to my number 4 disappointment, which was Imperial Settlers. So Imperial Settlers is an interesting one. It's re-implements the 51st state. And I'd only heard really good things about Imperial Settlers. And so once upon a time, we were in Nova Scotia. We were looking for a game to play. This was on sale at the Boardroom Game Cafe. I said, great, I've heard great things about it. Z Garcia has 51st State as his number 1 game of all time, which this re-implements. I'm like, great, this can't possibly be horrible. But it was. I don't think it's a horrible game, but I just found the game flow to be, well, disappointing. You're encouraged to build all of these different buildings, and when you do, you can activate a permanent ability in your town. Each round, you're going to get a designated amount of, let's see if we can zoom in at all here, a designated amount of resources, production over here, and then you have to use those resources, and you produce resources on anything that you've built, and then you must use those resources throughout the round or you got to lose them. You're going to be building sort of different types of structures on each side of the board, some which will give you permanent victory points, some which will allow you to increase your production. And also each faction plays differently. They all have different strengths. They all have different cards in their deck. You have a normal, ordinary deck of cards, and that's what will go on the right side. And then you have all of your sort of personalized buildings, and that will be on the left side. There's the ability to destroy other people's buildings if they're too good, and then they get some resources as recompense. Everything that I'm saying makes me be like, man, why was this game so bad? But I played it numerous times, just like hoping to find something interesting about it, and it just gave me the same gameplay loop over and over and over. And I was like, what am I missing? What am I possibly missing here that people talk about it and put it into high esteem? And I think I was missing that there was I missed this picture, true evidence that it is a baby game for babies. Unboxing by my 1-year-old son. Yeah, and I imagine he played it very well and won. It's just the flow of it wasn't very fun. The cards that you get are random. The amount of cards you get to draw doesn't give you that much excitement. The engines and the combos that you can put together just aren't satisfying. It's sort of a blah burger sandwich on a burnt crust of plain pizza. That's what it is. And I would recommend that everybody never try it and save that time for something else. The community number 3, we're on to number 3 now, is Fog of Love. Fog of Love hit on 3 people's list or just 2? 2 people, but they were at the very top. And this is what I've been concerned about with Fog of Love. I haven't played it before, but the concept of it feels interesting. And then I feel like the gameplay, of course, will always be lacking in it. People kind of put this forward as like a best date game, which I think is absolutely wrong. The cards are ambiguous or inconsistent. The tutorial system doesn't work as well as it's supposed to. That's comments from the community. And the sort of weird pushes you to role play, but not really role play in it. I think this would fall flat for me as well. And I think it's one of those games that sort of has gotten its acclaim because of the theme and not necessarily because of what mechanisms are put forward in the game. Potentially. I don't know. I haven't played this one, but that is number 3. It was super high up at number 1 and number 2 on people's lists. We're moving on to my number 3. We're really getting into the weeds now. This is from my favorite designer of all time. a part of a trilogy of my favorite game of all time. My expectations for this game were at an all-time high, and they were really, man, I wanted to love this game so much. I like desperately wanted to love this game. I was so excited for this game. I made an insert before I even played it. I insta-backed. I don't insta-back anything, and it was an all-in pledge for me at the very beginning. I even got a playmat. I was like, you know what? If any game could make me like playmats and appreciate them, I'm going to do this with Aaaand, because I love Rising Sun. And Blood Rage also is in the tops for me. And this game just fell so flat. And what's kind of cool about this falling so flat is that I realized that a lot of it had to do with how the game developed. So being such a big fan of Rising Sun and being very excited for this game, my excitement was really at an all-time high. I followed the development diaries of this game very closely, right? Like oftentimes you're following a game on Kickstarter that you kind of are into, you don't read the updates, you don't see what little tweaks have changed. But I looked at what little tweaks changed every single time, and I can guarantee you, or almost guarantee, I think my memory is not going to fail me now, but somebody, I'm sure the internet will let me know if I'm wrong. At the beginning of its inception, the merged god, when you merge and you are wiped from the board at a certain point of the game, you are merged with another god, the merged god got to take double the actions. So how it is right now is at a certain point in time, if you don't know the game, your gods vying for Egypt, at a certain time, the two lowest people on the honor track will get smushed together and become one god. And then you basically just take off all the figures of one of them, and you keep the figures of the other ones, and then they each get the bonus power, their asymmetric power. They become a team, and it's up to them to make up the time. Unfortunately, there is a ability that only the people who are in the lead generally have at this point in time of the game, that just make the game on a time clock, a counter, if you will, and it becomes impossible for you to catch up because they're just already running away with the game. Like they've already set it in motion, you just can't catch up. But with the merge god, you only get one action on your turn, whereas everybody else gets two actions. So between you and your partner, you get two actions, and the benefit being that you can take the same action, whereas you wouldn't be allowed to take the same action on your turn. You have to take two different actions. When this was first put forward, the merge god got to take two actions and then two actions. So you essentially doubled your actions. You got more chances to do things. You got to activate more stuff. You were supremely more powerful. And over the course of the development process, this got changed because the merge god was winning too much, right? So people were just, and especially if you were just really not that far behind, it's difficult because some people will be really far behind and some people will be just behind and then get a super powered turn and then be able to overleap the other competitor, right? Like it's hard to balance, and I understand why that change happened, but I think in that nerf, they nerfed it a bit too much, and it really deflated the table anytime I played with a large group of people. When they had to merge, they were very upset because all of their progress just got removed, and it didn't matter that it was like for just the tail end of the game. People just didn't like it. And it also never mattered because they still didn't have a chance. They basically just got to watch the other player play the game. It was essentially player elimination without the elimination aspect, right? That you kind of were just faked into still being part of the game. Also, at a two-player game, I think this probably is best at a two-player game. It is a tight game in which if someone gets ahead early, they will likely stay ahead early. It is a sort of rich get richer race. And one that I don't mind. Oh, that's a great paint job. Oh, baby, look at those. It's cool. I don't mind that struggle against something that will never happen. You know, I'm like, okay, I can see that you've won the game, but we're going to play out the second half of the game and I'm going to struggle to catch up because I made these two mistakes early on and now I can't catch up because you've outpaced me. I don't mind games like that because I still find enjoyment in the chase, but it doesn't make for a fun game for a lot of people. And so it was really devastating and disappointing that like the concepts here just didn't pan out. I ended up selling the full copy at cost to somebody in Montreal. I just plopped it in a big old box and sent it off, and I hope they're enjoying it and they can enjoy my great insert that put everything into two boxes. But yeah, it was just really devastating for me because I love Rising Sun. Rising Sun's my number one game, and I would put Eric Lang as my number one designer, and I just hated it. And I lied to myself that I hated it for a long time, and then I realized that no, you hate it. You need to just get it gone. And so I'm very happy I don't have it in my collection anymore. But that was one that I might have held on to for a long time just because of hope. Luckily, I played it a ton in that hope and subjected myself to it a ton, and then realized nothing was changing. We're moving on to the community number 2, which is Gloomhaven. Now, I'm putting this as a caveat because everybody in the comments, it was Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs, it was Gloomhaven Forgotten Circles, and it was Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, I think. Oh no, yeah, those were the ones that were mentioned, and so they were all like, listen, we like the base game. Everything else is trash. So it's important to mention so that it is sort of the Gloomhaven additions that are additions, not editions, that have been added to Gloomhaven. There was a comment of that, like Gloomhaven's for Forgotten Circles specifically. For what is likely my favorite game of all time, the expectations for an expansion would be pretty damned high, in every way did this fail. There was only one additional character you were required to play in every scenario, who arguably sucked. The scenarios themselves were either okay or rage-inducing. The split books for the scenarios actively made things worse, having to flip back and forth several pages numerous times throughout most of them. 0 out of 10. Honestly, Gloomhaven could be... No, it's not close for a disappointment for me. I like Gloomhaven. I think Gloomhaven is fine. I didn't expect it to blow me out of the water, and it does deliver on like a very satisfying loop. And I'm excited to play the digital version now that I've gotten rid of the physical one. Once Josh realizes that we're never going to play it because he never wants to play it with me. And it is exclusively his fault that we haven't played the physical version. My number 2 on this list, moving on to my number 2 disappointment. Honestly, Aaaand could be higher up, but there was another one whose status sort of eclipsed everything when talking about epic games. I also have a full review on this one, and this is Twilight Imperium, the 3rd edition. Now, here's one of those things where I played the 3rd edition. I didn't play it with the expansion. I didn't shell out the additional $60 to get the one little cardboard token to fix the game. To fix the game that was on its 3rd edition that at the time was still in the Board Game Geek Top 100. It was still ranked 125 best board game of all time right now. The 3rd edition, the base 3rd edition of Twilight Imperium. Twilight Imperium is a game we played the long version of. We wanted to see the most how epic it could be. It took us 12 hours. We were like, yes, there were so many potential things that could have worked. Let's try it again. And then it got worse. And it took us, 9 hours because we were more familiar with it. I know so many people in the Discord love Twilight Imperium. You should just go watch my review on my full thoughts, but it is the fool's gold of board gaming. It is a game that is memorable because of its length and not because of its systems or mechanisms. It is a game that you will remember fondly because you played it with people in a setting that you enjoyed, and not because anything memorable actually happened because of the game. It is a garbage game for garbage people like all of my dear favorite garbage patrons. And I just... I want to love this game. I want to have the experience that everybody talks about. I want to have that epic nature in my life, and I do have it through the incredibly superior experience Galactic Era. Galactic Era, the designer contacted me and said, "Hey, I saw your Twilight Imperium review. I also kind of felt that way, and so I made a game that fixed everything that I hated about it." And yes, he did. This is a fantastic game. Get this game, play it instead of that garbage Twilight Imperium, and realize that you can have true happiness in your life. And this will take 4 to 5 hours, so it'll still give you a nice big epic time. Or it'll take less. I forget. Just an exceptional game. Twilight Imperium is not. I'm not going to rehash it. You can go watch that full review if you want to know my thoughts. But yeah, that's my number 2. Now, the number 1 game, the universally reviled game, throughout the Room and Board Discord. But I'm going to read this review of it from my doppel. And this is Dark Souls, the board game. Dark Souls, the board game by Steamforge made Steamforge kind of universally reviled and untrusted. I find with a lot of people. That's how bad this game was. Let me read, and I'll accompany it with some pictures. It's unbelievable to me about how bad a game it was when it first came. I backed the initial Kickstarter. I've tried to play it with 4 or 5 people, no more than 3 players. No one enjoyed it. The trash fight grind is just such a shit and long experience. Even following some homebrew rules to speed it up didn't make it worthwhile. I honestly think fighting the trash mobs is such a boring experience that the only option is to remove it entirely. Only we tried that. We cheated to just start at the boss with a loadout that seemed right, and honestly, the boss fighting is just okay. It should have been the whole game, because this is like 2 games put together, a slightly disappointing boss battler, and a huge shit arena fight versus the same enemies 10 to 20 times in a row. The boss fights are acceptable, but not exceptional. Items and character builds just felt not meaningful enough. It honestly felt so basic compared to so many other games from the time. Nothing was exciting. I know you can simplify most games down to some +1s or other similar reductive descriptions, but this game really felt like that. It felt like a really old and outdated design. With some really cool minis, there you go. Which is pretty damning considering we were playing as a group that enjoyed the source material. I really can't believe it was shipped in the state that it was, or that Steamforged managed to survive with this as an early offering. I think Steamforged games got lucky with being early in the Kickstarter era, because this release now would have been a company-ending game launch. Here's another one. I actually didn't back Dark Souls when it was on Kickstarter. My wife was pregnant. I was getting out of the military, and the future was really uncertain. It just wasn't the right time to throw hundreds of dollars into the wind for eventually getting a board game. But I love Dark Souls. I've been playing FromSoft RPGs since Shadow Tower and Souls games, starting with Demon Souls. I was part of the push to get Dark Souls to PC, so it hurt to pass up. It hurt really bad. And then I played it. Setting up was fine. It had some parallels to Bloodborne, and the rulebook isn't awful. I think BB, I assume that's Bloodborne. Seeing lots of piles of cards, and the characters already seem unbalanced reading through. Lots of fiddly character management that I can already see as being annoying. Wait, everything resets when you use the bonfire, which makes sense thematically, but there are a lot of things to do, and they've added a timer mechanic to discourage grinding, which makes sense, but playing the game is tedious. Enemies are strong in groups, so you exploit their simple AI to pick them off because you can't afford to lose health on the way to the boss. But you want to grind for souls and loot before the boss, so you run through the enemies a few times. The same enemies, with the same AI rules. So you can basically optimize a room and then either do the same thing or just take the loot since you know the outcome by this point. And then there's so many encounter rooms. And in between, there's so much looting, loot sorting, and resetting. And then you get to the boss, and they're pretty good. More interactive and true to source than BB, if less narrative-driven. But if you have any skill counting cards, not hard to predict and exploit. And you're just so tired of nodes and waiting out attacks and checking the rulebook for edge cases. So yeah, the Dark Souls the board game will always be my most disappointing game. I love the minis, like the bosses, and have enough sentimental value that it would be one of the last games to sell. I still remember the campaign previews of how the bosses move and attacked and want more of that. But the only way I play it again is with a lot of house ruling and the right group. A lot of house ruling that somebody else did, because I won't take the time. When we were talking about this in the Discord, they were like, Chris isn't going to just make a video about this because it'll be him shitting on Dark Souls for 59 minutes. And apparently I can. They came out with a revamp of Dark Souls, which I am just so scared to ever try. But Steamforged did ask me one point if I would try, and I was like, I know how much people loved and were so disappointed by Dark Souls that like I would, but then nothing ever came of that. Like they didn't end up sending to me. And there's no way that I would be spending real money on this franchise whatsoever, knowing of how like reviled and how much people don't like it. Too much of a grind, boring, needs far too many tweaks to the game rules. Maybe those tweaks were made. Maybe those tweaks were made and they made a good game, but I'm going to wait to see the other reviews before I would ever consider getting it. But there we are. That's the #1 reviled game in the Room and Board community. 3 people putting it very high on their list. That's Dark Souls the board game. And other people chiming in saying it just don't look that good. My #1 most disappointing game of all time has been mentioned, and I tried not to harp on it too much when it was mentioned because I wanted to save that harping for now. It is The Seventh Continent. The Seventh Continent is absolutely my most disappointing board game experience. It's just bad. I forget when I played this. I think I played it in 2022. So by that time it was 5 years old, and it absolutely was showing its age. And I'd heard so many pray tell of the amazing stories that can happen and how great the riddles are. The riddles aren't great. It's like, hey, do you see a 3 written on this card? Great. Happy riddle. You know what's great about Seventh Continent? When you wander up and you know the map and the direction that you want to go to cross a bridge, except for some reason there's a random event that puts a big old stone block in the way and says, oops, you can't go here. Better find another route around. And then you stumble up, hopefully just going up one and over, but instead get lost in a frozen tundra for 3 hours. Yeah, that's fun. You know what's great? Giving an intro mission to give an experience of the game, which will take you over various spots in the realms that when you see them in other missions down the line, you might have some familiarity. Sure, but that takes like 17 hours for this first mission, this first initial thing. Seventh Continent was one of the worst experiences, not just of board gaming, but of my entire life. And I've had my toenails ripped from my body over and over again. I would much prefer that to Seventh Continent. I would prefer to be back in high school biology, where I told the teacher that I would rather be buried alive in a hole filled with mud than be forced to look under a microscope for my living. We had to do these stupid, journals about why the things we were studying were going to be meaningful to you. And I was like, this isn't meaningful. I don't know why you're making me write this, because when I did the bullshit answer, you didn't give me a perfect A+, so I'm going to give you the honest answer. And then I realized the power of honesty. And comedy. Seventh Continent is just a horrid experience. You're constantly flipping through a Rolodex of cards over and over again, pulling out cards just to put them back. But it has the narrative complexity of something along the same lines as Myst, the computer game, which doesn't really have a narrative whatsoever. And so there's no even narrative that you can grasp onto and hold. Instead, you just have to go flip over cards over and over to grab food, which there is a way to manipulate the system, which I go into detail in the review, and people told me I was wrong. And to those people, I say, open your ears up, because I'm saying it correctly. You can manipulate it even when you're on the last stage, the gold stage of your hunting ground, when you've almost drained the swamp of all the tasty little crocodile meat. You can still do it. It takes a long time, but you can do it. And the fact that you can grind it out like that in such a long and arduous process is very emblematic of the game, because everything else is that long and arduous process. Crafting is boring. The game is awful, and please don't get sucked into anyone telling you that this is a good game. And in fact, if they do, you should ask them who hurt them in their past and how you can be a good friend and heal them from that wound. Who hurt me? You know the answer? I think you do. It's Seventh Continent. The result of all my woes as a human being have stemmed from me playing this game. This is how my skull will look once I fade away from this mortal coil, which I'm getting closer to every second that I speak about this accursed game. It is fitting that this game does say that you have been cursed right from the bat, because I clearly have not gotten over that curse, as it has resonated with me for the rest of my life. I will carry this with me in my bones until my dying grave as a sort of sense trauma memory. There will be ghost pains anytime I see a black box with a simple symbol on the outside. There will be ghost pains anytime somebody tells me a campaign game can cure my wildest dreams, or that a game has good and exciting riddles. If you'd like to play Seventh Continent and you don't have a copy, well, it's very simple. Get 72 packs of cards, shuffle them up, throw them on the ground, and then go organize them in a Rolodex. And then pull them out. I'll call out random numbers. Deck 3, card 72. Oh, there's only 52 cards. Deck 3, card 44. Deck 5, card 15. Deck 1, 7. Deck 8, 34. Go get those cards, put them in a line. Okay, tell me when you're done. Great, put them back where you found them, except for Deck 3's card. Now add Deck 2's card on top of Deck 5's card. Now make sure it's the same number. I hope you remembered. It's on the back of the card. It was probably 15. I don't know. Although, to be fair, that's not representative of the game. Seventh Continent is the pizza burn on the roof of the world's mouth. It is the mosquito bite on the ankle of humanity. It is the soggy fry on the bottom of the world's takeout bag. It is the autocorrect of duck. Seventh Continent is a horrid game, and I can't possibly trust Sean that Seventh Citadel is better. So there we go. Oh, we have to laugh sometimes. We just have to have some fun because we put ourselves through these disappointing times. And if we can't get joy out of the disappointing times, what are we doing here, right? Games inherently should be fun. And even a bad game. And I think the reason why games can be so disappointing is because we do get such limited time. Limited play time, so to speak. And so we want that play time to be invigorating and to fill our cup and to make us happy and to make us excited. And so that's why I go over the top and laugh about these sorts of things, because at least then I've gotten something out of it. Because I certainly didn't in the moment. But that's not all. My honorable mentions for disappointments. Things that I had. Night Cage was on there because it had to be. Dragonbond, Lords of Vala, I just got rid of that one recently too. That one was disappointing in that it just didn't hit in terms of how I wanted it to, but it wasn't disappointing enough to make the list. Last Light. Last Light was disappointing because they said it would take an hour and it took 3 hours with 8 people and it was just excruciating. John Company was very disappointing. I loved all of the concepts put forth and the history, and then just in practice it didn't play out. Also, my play of Mind Management was on a list of these previously because I only played the one time. It really just didn't hit. I can see the potential for Mind Management though. Out of all of these, I can see the potential for that one and would be most willing to play that one sooner. Although, honestly, it's not up here anymore. It's on the other shelf. Run serves all of my mind management needs that I could possibly want. Tainted Grail was on there, and then Spicy, the card game Spicy, was on there because my friend Ray hyped it up, and I like Cockroach Poker better. But those are just minor disappointments. The top 10 were there. And I do want to go through the full list of disappointments. These are the honorable mentions of disappointments. There was basically a tie from 12 to 20 in terms of score. Or no, 12 was just shy Spires and Hildegard. Okay, that's good, because people talk about it being a good solo game, and then I guess not narratively that exciting. 2 people said that. And then all the other ones are ones. These are all people who have just put these on the ones, but these are all people's number 1 disappointments, which I think is important. Reckland Run, Waypoints, Viticulture World, Vampire Masquerade, The Isle of Dr. Necro, Great Western Trail Argentina, that's interesting. Facilis, Island Something Shiny was number 1 for someone. Dutch Blitz, how dare you? I know who you are and I'm coming for you. But I also understand. And if you play Dutch Blitz at more than 4 people as your first play too, that's a bad experience. Disney Lorcana, Cryptid, Cascadia, and Brass, those were all ranked number 1 for people. And then going down the list, people's ranked number 2. Weather Machine, Verdant, Princess Bride Adventure Book, Sheriff of Nottingham, oh no. Root, Role Player Adventures, Paper Tales, Motor City, Longshot the Dice Game, Dungeons and Dragons, Champions of Midgard, Apocalypse Chaos. Haha, I got rid of it. I knew there was a reason. People's number 3s were Wormspan, Undaunted, King's Dilemma, Suspects. Claire Harper Takes the Stage. Never heard of that one. Never will. Scythe, Nemesis Lockdown, Hamburg, Fractured Sky, Forbidden Island, Baron Voodoo, Baron Park, and then we're going to keep on going down. The Fox Experiment, these are people's 4s. Rhino Hero Super Battle, Raw. I understand, I talk about Raw a lot. That's probably my fault. Mythwind, Mansions of Madness, Last Light. Okay, if I had included it, it would have been up there. Inventions, Evolutions of Ideas, Doctor Who, the card game, Desolate, Deep Blue, Charterstone, Cascadia Rolling, so the rolling version. Capital X2, that was on a Hidden Gems one. I guess somebody tried it, didn't like it. Battlecrest, Battle for Rokugan. That one seems like it's in my memory for some reason. Awkward Guests, I still want to try that. Amsterdam, Wonderland's War. Oh no, I loved Wonderland's War, my play of it. I think it's so good. Villagers, Patchwork, Obsession. I see that I was a little disappointed by Obsession, the market that it gave there. Next Station, Tokyo, Munchkin, Mission Catastrophe, Loot of Lima, Expeditions, Elder Sign, Daybreak, Betrayal at Mystery Mansion, Bard Sung. Yeah, I heard Bard Sung was a real grind too, speaking of Steamforge. Ultra Quest, Wild Serengeti, Time Stories, Sleeping Gods, Rallyman GT, Race for the Galaxy, Planet. Oh, the Planet, that's the one where you stick the things on the 3D globe. That's kind of a neat thing. Heat, yeah, Endless Winter, 11 Football Manager. Yeah, I heard that one wasn't that good too. I hope it didn't pick it as a pick for me way back in the day. I don't think I did. D-Day Dice, Blood on the Clock Tower. I can see that. Ankh, yeah, another. That would have probably brought Ankh into the tops if I had added my list beforehand. I like not adding my list to the community now for when we do the stats, because then there's less crossover, and I think that's a little bit more interesting. Under Falling Skies, Ticket to Ride Legacy, Tales of Arabian Nights, Spalfy, Santorini. Zach would agree with you on that. Zach didn't like Santorini, and it almost ruined our friendship. Massive Darkness. Oh no, that was so good. Flick 'em Up, Dead of Winter, Exit the Game, Darwin's Journey. I loved that one. Codenames Marvel, Black Sonata, Arkham Horror, the card game. Welcome to Avalon, The Magnificent, The King is Dead, The Floor, The Winchester Mysteries. Never heard of it. Psychic Pizza Deliverers. How can you be disappointed with that? You should know what you're getting. Micropolis, Excavation Earth, Dune, just regular Dune, Beyond the Sun. Beyond the Sun is great. Beyond Humanities, Arkham Horror, Anachrony. Oh no, I'm sorry. I always feel personally responsible when games that I love don't hit well with people. Seven Wonders Architect, They Live, Assault on Cable 54, Mystic Vale, Marvel United, yes. Maracaibo. I want to try Maracaibo. Magic Maze, Mage Knight, Kingdom Death Monster for Northwood, Flame and Fang, Final Girl, Evolution, Escape the Dark Castle, Castles of Burgundy, Twilight Struggle, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, Role Player, River Valley Glassworks, New York Zoo, My Father's Work, Lords of Waterdeep, Horizons of Spirit Island, Hadrian's Wall, Fantasy Realms, Call to Adventure, and A Feast for Odin. Oh, A Feast for Odin is so good. I'm so sorry that it was your number 10 disappointment, whoever put it there. Those are our 143 honorable mentions-ish. I mean, 133, but then I added in 7, so we're close enough. If you heard something on the list, someone's out to get you. Someone hates what you like and wants your game night the next time you play it to be a disappointment. Whatever games you are playing, we all like different things. Some of us like the correct things, and some of you are fools. But whatever you're playing, I hope that you are enjoying it, and you do get it at the table. We never want a disappointment to happen, and so I think it's important to talk about when it does, and which ones really, there's a reason why things stand out, often because of the level of hype that you have not meeting expectations. And we don't want that in a game. We want to have low expectations and have them blown out of the water. That's what I try to do with every aspect of my life, and I'm certainly not going to stop now. That's why I don't understand people who boast. No. Undersell yourself and then still be the best to ever be. Then you seem even more impressive, right? Anyway, thanks for being here. I hope this video was enjoyable. Drop your own biggest disappointment down below as well, and tell us why. And say, was it a thing of expectation? Was it broken expectation? Was it that the game systems are horrible, and this is why they are? I'm really interested. I think it's a good cautionary tale for everyone, that we can turn the disappointments into something positive. That's the goal here. Thanks for watching. My name is Chris George. And you know what? I do not have a catchphrase. Even though people in the Discord are saying that my catchphrase is that The Night Cage is the #1 game of all time, which it is not. I want to be clear. That's some fake news going around. Get that out of there. I hope the next game that you play is not a horrible experience. Which, whenever I get that review, you know I'm going to put it on my dating profile. Not a horrible experience.